Today, we're diving into a case that is just chilling. On one hand, you have the story of this really beloved community member, a friendly, popular guy everyone seemed to love. But on the other hand, you have the story of a monster, a serial killer who preyed on the very people who trusted him. And the scariest part? They were the exact same person. I mean, just look at this. On the surface, Henry Louis Wallace was the guy next door. Popular, a cheerleader, a Navy vet. But underneath all that was a horrifying reality. This is the big question we're going to unpack. How in the world do these two completely opposite identities exist in the same person, hiding right there in plain sight?
So, to really understand how this could even happen, we have to start with the man everyone thought they knew. Because the mask he wore, well, it was basically perfect. His whole background was shockingly normal. I mean, in high school, he wasn't some kind of outcast. He was popular. He played sports, was on the student council, and was even the only male cheerleader. One of his teammates literally said they trusted him totally. After high school, he joined the Navy. So you see, this wasn't some shadowy figure. This was a guy who went out of his way to seem trustworthy and successful.
But here's the thing. A perfect mask isn't always enough. A predator like this also needs the right environment to get away with it. And back in the early 1990s, Charlotte, North Carolina was a city in crisis, and that chaos provided the perfect cover for a monster to move completely unnoticed. To give you some perspective, in 1993 alone, Charlotte had a record 129 murders. The city was in the middle of a major crack epidemic, and violent crime was it was everywhere. This wasn't just a statistic, it was a tidal wave of chaos that stretched the police department to its absolute breaking point. And the problem was systemic, The police force was way understaffed. Homicide detectives were juggling 100 or more cases at a time. Critical evidence, like rape kits, were just sitting in a massive backlog, not even tested. And worst of all, Wallace himself had already slipped right through the cracks. He'd been charged with kidnapping and sexual assault before, but warrants were just forgotten, and he was released. The system that's supposed to stop guys like him, it had failed, over and over again. And this brings us to what makes this case so uniquely terrifying. Wallace didn't stalk strangers in the dark. He hunted his friends, his coworkers, the people in his day-to-day life. It was the ultimate betrayal of trust. This quote from an investigator really just says it all, doesn't it? The women he targeted, they let him into their homes. They welcomed him into their lives. They had absolutely no reason to be afraid of him because the good Henry was the only Henry they'd ever seen. Just look at this web of connections. It's staggering. He was a manager at Taco Bell. His girlfriend worked at a Bojangles. He killed his own employee, his coworkers, his girlfriend's roommate, her coworker, a coworker's sister. They were all connected through this really tight-knit world of two fast food restaurants. He wasn't an outsider looking in. He was right at the center of their lives. And the audacity? My God, the audacity was just off the charts. After he murdered his girlfriend's roommate, Caroline Love, he actually went with her sister to the police station to file a missing persons report for her. He sat there, playing the part of the worried friend, knowing exactly what he did. It's a level of manipulation that's almost impossible to even wrap your head around. But a killer who's this bold, this brazen, eventually they get sloppy. And it was his final, frantic spree that would be his undoing. Finally ripping that mask off for good and showing everyone the monster underneath. So in March of 1994, he just completely escalated. 3 murders in only 4 days. He was getting desperate and he was getting sloppy. And this quick succession of crimes, all happening in the same area, finally started to connect the dots for the overworked police. And this right here, this was the mistake they'd been waiting for. After he killed Betty Balcom and stole her car, he tried to wipe it down, to clean it of any evidence. But he missed a spot. On the trunk lid, he left a single, perfect palm print. And for the first time, police had actual physical evidence that could link these crimes to one person. So when the police finally brought him in, they figured they had their guy for this recent killing spree. Maybe 3, maybe 4 murders in total. But they had no idea. The truth was so much worse. After a few hours of questioning, Wallace just calmly asked for a piece of paper. And he wrote down a list. He confessed to murdering 11 women across 2 states in a spree that went back years, a spree that no one had ever even connected. His arrest didn't just put him on trial, though. It put the entire system on trial. The case exposed this shocking legacy of failure. But you know what? it also forced some really desperately needed changes.
The number of missed opportunities here is just, it's mind-boggling. He was let go after a violent assault on a minor. He was released without even posting bond after kidnapping and raping a teenager. Warrants just got lost in the shuffle. Murders of women from the same community college who worked at the same 2 restaurants went totally unlinked. Every single one of these was a chance to stop him, and every single one was missed.
But if any good can possibly come from a tragedy like this, it's that it forces change. The Charlotte Police Department had to take a hard look at itself. They hired more detectives so they weren't so overwhelmed. They opened their own forensic lab to get through that evidence backlog. And really importantly, they started new programs to work better with the victims' families, to make sure they never felt ignored like that again. So, the case of Henry Louis Wallace is this perfect storm of a master manipulator and a deeply broken system. He was caught, he was convicted, and he was sentenced to death. But the whole thing leaves you with this really unsettling question, doesn't it? He wasn't some stranger hiding in the shadows. He was a friend, a coworker. He was the boy next door. And that forces us all to ask, how do we spot the monsters who look and act just like us?